My name is Ricardo Ariza. I've been working in the industry for quite some time now. Currently, I work at Valve Software. I've been there for the last 13, 14 years. Prior to that, I worked at Naughty Dog for where I worked on Uncharted 1 and 2. And then previous to that, I worked at Treyarch, working on some of their biz dev stuff and some work on Spider-Man 3. And then prior to that, I was working in film, where I got a chance to work on such great films like Ghost Rider and Spider-Man 3, strangely enough. But yeah, that's a quick introduction.
So, animating for film versus animating for games. What's similar and what's different?
So, film, you're basically working on a shot-by-shot basis. A lot of the time, you're creating things just for a single shot, which is a lot different than video games where you're creating things to be seen in the round. So it's definitely different there. Film, you tend to have a lot of things handed down to you, basically concepts given to you. You end up working through a lot of what that is. Then you go back and forth a little bit with feedback, but mostly it has to nail that concept almost identically, because it's been through so many approvals from management to producers, etc., that by the time it lands on your lap, if you try and make any changes, it's going to have to go all the way back up that ladder in order for it to actually become anything. Games is a little bit different, where at least in the companies that I've worked at, where the ladders, where you end up getting handed something, but you collaborate a lot more with the concept artist and the art director, because they're a little bit more approachable. There's no overarching director like all the way near the top that's just handing things down, at least in my experiences. So there's definitely quite a big of a difference there. The reason why I like games, working in games more than film, is it's a non-linear storytelling mode. So basically, it's it instead of being one story, which a film is, you either like it or you don't. Video games can go in multiple different ways, and you end up just exploring them in different ways. So you have more of a chance of connecting with your viewer or your player. Film was a lot of fun, and I met a lot of great people there. Film was definitely interesting. It was a lot of work. The work was seasonal, which was interesting. At least when I was doing it, it was so you would do your you would work towards your summer blockbusters. Then you would get a little bit of a lull. It was a lot of contract work. So you'd go from contract to contract. As soon as one contract ended, you were on the phone calling your friends, seeing where they're working, what films they're working on, and then trying to get a job there. So it was fun in that respect. So you got to meet a lot of people because you were constantly shifting studios. Like, I worked at quite a few studios when I was doing it, and yeah, it was a lot of fun because of that. But definitely it's seasonal work. So you have, like, after your summer blockbusters, you have that lull, and after your winter blockbusters, you have the lull. And a lot of the time you've been working so many days a week that you don't know what to do with yourself, because you basically have only met the people that you're working with because you've been working so many long hours. So
There's just no, after this shot of Ghost Rider, let's just go grab a beer with Nicolas Cage or anything.
No, there's none of that.
What would you say is a full laid out blueprint for making a game?
There is no blueprint.
So there's no process at all. It's just no process.
Well, every place that I've worked, and every game that I've worked on has had a completely different process and a completely different way of approaching it. So it kind of comes down to the crew and the people that you're working with and how it's going to flesh out. Like for instance, when I was at Naughty Dog, it was story first. Like, the story drove a lot of what was happening within there. And the programmers were very, very heavily helped in creating the art. because they wanted the best aesthetic that the game would end up as. So that was pretty interesting because as the story was being developed, we'd all of a sudden start getting more and more characters handed to us to work on. So it was a lot of kind of pivoting during that game, but it was really fun to be able to do that because you never knew what was coming down the pipeline. A game like, for instance, Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead 1 was interesting because when I got to Valve during that time, and that was the first project I had worked on. It was the project was actually handed to us by another studio, Turtle Rock, which was working in tandem with Valve in order to release it. And that project had already the scaffolding built for it. So we were trying to port that into the source game engine and then redo a lot of the artwork for it and basically try to add in story beats to it. So it was a lot of trying to kind of wedge things into the game, which was really interesting. So that process was quite different. Let me think. Left 4 Dead 2. Left 4 Dead 2 was the next project I worked on at Valve, which was another weird one. So since Left 4 Dead 1, we were trying to get everything in source and we were just trying to complete the game as quickly as possible. Left 4 Dead 2 ended up to be this really interesting game where we had all these ideas during Left 4 Dead 1 that we wanted to implement, but we didn't have the time to be able to. So that project was actually completed in less than 8 months. We had a team of people that was really, really passionate about getting these certain things done within the game that we wanted to see, and trying to get it in as quickly as we can to like dev it, see if it works, see how fun it is. And we ended up plowing through that within, I think it was 8 or 10 months. And we did the entirety of Left 4 Dead 2 within that time frame, which was pretty fun. Fun fact about Uncharted 1. Uncharted 1 was actually completed in less than a year because
Pause. I'm sorry. Are you trying to tell me right now that you worked on Uncharted 1?
Yeah, definitely. I did the majority of the characters in Uncharted 1.
See, now the whole nature of this podcast has changed. I'm a huge fan of the Uncharted games. So.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah, I was very involved in Uncharted 1. And Uncharted 2, I worked only probably about for 6 to 8 months on it, and then I left to go to Valve. So yeah, Uncharted 1 was interesting because Uncharted 1 they were switching between the consoles. The new consoles were coming out. I think it was the PlayStation 3, was it?
PlayStation 3 at the time, yeah.
Yeah, so they were switching between consoles. So Sony, the Sony main dev team was actually coming up with the ICE engine, which is the game engine that it ultimately ran on, so that we can put it onto the new consoles. But they had very specific dev targets that they had given us, and they were like, this is your poly counts, this is how we're going to be able to run the game. This is how how many cycles you'll have on the CPUs, the GPUs, etc. And this was early on, so we started building the game to that. And turns out about a year to release, they got a lot closer with it, and all those numbers that they gave them were wrong. So we basically had to scrap almost everything. I mean, it was Uncharted 1 originally had even underwater levels, which were really cool. But those were all scrapped, and eventually we ended up with the Uncharted 1 that you saw publicly. But yeah, that was a lot of work in a short amount of time, because we had already had the deadline for building out the actual game and its advertising budget and when things were going to land. So there was we're not going to release it until a later date. We had to hit that date. So those 12 months were insanely packed with a lot of fun of working.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. Spent a lot of time with my coworkers then.
Who's the one that came up with the puzzle schemes for Uncharted? Because that person, we need to have the conversation, because that was 3 to 5 weeks of my life.
I actually don't know who did that. I don't really remember who did that. I mean, the game designers on it were Richard Lemanchichan, which is now a professor. One of the original guys that created Sonic the Hedgehog was one of the designers there. I blank on his name. He was a phenomenal talent. Amy Henning was also one of them. She did story and game design. Neil Druckmann was actually there at the time. He was just a game. He was a game designer at the time. He wasn't. He hadn't moved into the leader role that he's in now. So yeah, it could have been any of them.
Definitely gonna look up one of those people, because I need to ask that question with the puzzle.
Yeah, those guys are either. I could be forgetting another one, but those guys were the key guys that were back there doing all the game design. I was in the trenches making all the art I could.
So speaking of which, what elements of the game did you work on per se?
Oh, a lot of the characters. So I did. Gosh, I need to look it up. I did the original wetsuit that you saw when the game started. That Drake was wearing. I did some of the grooming of the hair on Drake. I did Sullivan start to finish.
Classic Sully.
Yeah, classic Sully. I did. Let me think. I can't remember. It was one of Elena's outfits. I did Eddie Raja. I did. Who was the blonde-haired guy? The villain blonde-haired guy.
Blonde-haired villain guy. Could be.
Yeah, he was the gray-haired villain guy. I can't remember his name. He had like suspenders.
Did he was the one that owned the organization that Sully was working for, right?
Yes. Yep.
I have a name. That's names. I'm not good at names.
Yeah. Yeah, I made him. Who else? I made a lot of the cannon fodder characters, like the guys that you're just shooting randomly.
Random targets, I like to call them. Random targets.
Yeah. Enemy number A, B, and C, D. And I'm pretty sure that's what I called them.
It's just a little name tag. It's A, B.
If you look on the bottom of their feet, no. Oh, man.
I'm sure they just have like little titles.
Villain A.
See, but then I'm offended, because I killed Villain A, but then I got killed by Villain B somehow. Mm-hmm. Because they were just randomly in the crowd somewhere.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And also, I think the funniest thing is how the most drastic situations happen in Uncharted, and no matter what city you're in, the game, they're acting so calm the whole time.
Yep.
I'm just like, this whole thing's happened right in front of you. You're just watching, like just buying the fruit at the market. It's just like, oh, it's just another day. This is just Tuesday. Yep.
Oh my gosh.
That was cool. That was cool. A cool aspect of it, because I'm just thinking, someone's gotta move. Right?
Yep.
Someone's gonna be running after this kid is just running through the crowd. No one's wondering why. Actually, because I was curious about something, because you mentioned it a little bit before about, like, the time you took to work on it. I think you said 8 to 9 months, I believe.
Yeah.
But in regards to deadlines, how does that normally work for video games? Is it much similar to films, where it's just, it's got to be completed right then, right there, if ands or buts?
It does normally. So, for instance, like when I was at Activision, when I was over at Treyarch, They have a specific timeline for it. You have producers that are basically blocking out the time that it takes to work on things, and once you reach that time, you kind of got to move on, because if not, we're not going to finish the game in the end. But they have, I mean, a lot of them have large marketing budgets, which dictate a lot of it, so that once marketing starts beginning, you kind of have to keep rolling and make sure the product comes out at that time. Back then, it was a lot of time on store shelves too, so you had to block out with your GameStops and your Best Buys, your end caps and all that stuff. Those things are things that are pre-planned months in advance, and you can't miss the deadline in order to get those products on those shelves, because you won't have that opportunity again. So everything has to be on a very tight deadline in order to ship. If not, you basically blown a lot of money just getting your stuff advertised and getting it in front of people's hands or faces. So they're both kind of the same thing. Although film's a little bit different, because sometimes you might not be working at this studio that's creating the film. Film, the way they work typically is, let's say you have, I don't know, insert name a big blockbuster that needs a bunch of special effects. What they do is they have one main house that handles the effects for it, and then they farm out a bunch of other work to smaller VFX houses. That's why even like when you're watching Star Wars, ILM isn't the one that did all of the effects for it. I mean, they probably did the majority of it, but as you get towards the bottom, you start seeing all these other effects houses which also did shots for the movie. So, that basically, when you're working at one of those houses, smaller VFX houses, you're on a deadline just as much as you are if you were at the main place, because they have to get the shots back to whatever studio they were outsourced by. So the only time it's been any different is now where I'm at Valve, that we basically, since we are a private held company and don't have to answer to any boards or anything, we also own Steam, the distribution platform for games. We kind of can release games on our own time frame. When things are ready, basically, is when we release them. So we have that luxury, but no other place that I've ever worked has that luxury. So it's a special snowflake.
I haven't heard any that have that luxury either. So hearing it was just like, wait, really? Can I work there?
It's a tough place to get into, but it's one of the best places that I've ever worked, period, in my life. And I'm in my mid 40s now, so I've spent more time there than I've been at any other company, and I can't seem to praise it enough for how they treat you, how they treat your family, and it's just a phenomenal place to work. They're some of the nicest people that you've ever worked with, and working there is like working with your friends, because there's no bosses. You basically you hear about things by just talking to people, like in the lunchroom or grabbing coffee or whatnot, and then if somebody has a great idea and you have and you want to help them out, you just unplug your desk and you move over to them and start working next to them. So it's that simple. And then the way you get things done is you talk to people, you give them what you estimate your deadline is going to be for getting something done, and they hold you to that word. So if you start falling behind on something, it's up to you to basically be professional and just say, hey, I'm behind on something and it's going to take me X amount of time more, and that's kind of how things run at the studio. It's a pretty bizarro place to work.
What route should animators of today be taking to make it in the industry?
Be an advocate for people. Like, don't tag artists and put your work and say, hey, so and so, take a look at my work. Try actually advocating for people, retweeting or linking to people's work to show, hey, look, this person's work's really good, and I admire them. And that person, after a while, will hopefully start beginning to know your name. And at that point, then is when you start developing those relationships with the professionals. Developing professional relationships is huge when it comes down to getting a job in the industry. To put it into perspective, I haven't had to make a portfolio since I made my portfolio when I went to Full Sail, and that was now decades ago. And I've worked at some pretty good studios. I've been very, very blessed that people have seen my work, and I haven't had to create a portfolio at all, because people know who I am, they know my work, and they've been able to vouch for me, and that's how I've gotten jobs, which is amazing. So yeah, meet as many people as you can in the end that are in the industry, and find ways of meeting them. Don't just approach them and ask them questions. Just saying hello and congratulating them on their work sometimes goes a long way. If you ever get a chance to just talk to these people in actual person, it's not always about talking about the animation or whatever it is. People don't always want to talk shop. Talk to them about their other interests. That way you know them on a personal level, and that's a much deeper relationship than if you just talk to somebody about work. Don't stop learning, because the moment you stop learning, that's when you're going to stagnate, and you're not going to create any more good work, and you're going to stop growing as an artist. One of the things that I like to think about is not only developing your technical skill, but developing your voice as an artist. Like finding different things outside of the industry that are actually interesting to you, and infusing that within your own artwork. We have a really incestuous industry, the games and the film industry. As soon as one company creates a very popular title that has, let's say, I don't know, penguins in it, then the next company is going to create another title with penguins in it. So it's very incestuous. Just like if somebody creates something on ArtStation from a popular movie, then you're going to see 20 other people creating a similar thing from that same movie, and the only person you're going to ever be compared to if you're creating one of those things is the best version of that the person that's viewing it has seen. So you're kind of putting yourself at a disadvantage already. I've seen a lot of great work with bad presentation, and that kind of kills a portfolio for me. Like you can have good work presented really, really well, and that'll catch a lot more people's eyes. That'll catch recruiters' eyes a lot better than having, really great work with poor presentation. So let's say you're doing a model, actually creating a model that has some context to it, like creating a little pedestal with, some of the ground and some of the area that this person or character lives in would be interesting. Or if you're creating an animation, adding a bit of motion to the camera, adding a bit of lighting to it, and even doing the simplest particle effects really help make things shine. I have a very good friend of mine, Kyle Figgins, which does these really, really basic animations, and just does these like polygonal explosions and polygonal dust in his presentations that really make him sing. But it pulls him away from a lot of the other animators that just do a single shot with no particles or anything like that. They're just very simply lit, and has just enough information that's not taking away from the actual animation itself. So yeah, make things that add to your the story of what you're doing, and take away anything that potentially can draw the eye away from it. Show critical thinking. Critical thinking is huge. Like if I can see, let's say you're a concept artist or a character designer, showing your process is really, really big. Like for instance, when I go into creating a character, I'll create probably more than 3-4 dozen silhouettes of a character before I actually start thinking about narrowing it down to the ones that I think are good. Because my first idea is always wrong, and it's always a bad idea. I never have really good ideas when it first comes out. It's only after I've fleshed out um, quite a few things, and then started paring that stuff down and moving it just a little bit forward. So I'll take one of those sketches, and then I'll just do value study it on top of it to see if I can come up with like the secondary forms, and then see how 2 or 3 of them look, and then I'll work on whichever one I think is best out of those 2 or 3, and then finalize one of those. And showing that process is actually really important because it shows that the people are actually really thinking out what they're actually doing before they step into doing a 40 hour a week character. Because that's a lot of time to spend on something that you haven't originally thought through. This is another thing that isn't going to help you get into the industry, but once you get into the industry would probably be great, is to learn to be a problem solver. The more you're able to not ask people for help, the more you're able to research and learn on your own, the better you're going to be at any studio. Because anytime you have to tap somebody on the shoulder, and I'm not saying you don't have to do this, because there will be times where you definitely will, but it takes away from the productivity of that person in order to stop and help you do something. So you kind of always have to, if you always have to be given a solution, you're definitely not working on your problem solving muscles. So the more you're able to learn to problem solve, the better you're going to be, and the more likely chance that you're going to bubble up more towards like those lead and senior roles a lot faster. Compare yourself to the people in the industry. So those are like when you go to research where you want to work. Let's say you want to work at 2 or 3 companies. Let's say you want to work at company A, B, and C, and they all have some type of work that is somewhat similar. Let's say it's stylized work. You want to work in a stylized studio. You choose studios A, B, and C. Hunt down the people that work there. Go on LinkedIn and start looking for those people that work there. Look at their portfolios. Look and see how they've presented their portfolios, and that'll kind of give you a good understanding of what level your work needs to be at, and how to actually present your work in a meaningful way, so that it will hopefully be seen by those people and be appraised for going in for an interview. These are just ideas, right? But these are things that I've noticed. I mean, I've mentored quite a few people over the years, and the ones that have been successful are the ones that have been, doing these things. So, these aren't all my ideas. These are ideas that I have coworkers and people that I've worked with in the past have talked to me about. So they're just the things that I could think of off the top of my head because I wasn't really preparing for that.
No, because honestly, I feel that any animator or anyone who's got ambitions of being in that type of industry, it helps a lot, because I think when you get up to the point where you think you know how to do things, or you think you know the way to go about it, and you hear it from someone like you say it, it means a lot. It helps you narrow things down, helps you plan a lot better than you probably would have by yourself. So it's all great.
You actually bring up something that I forgot to mention. That you're not probably the best critic of your own work. So it's really good to get opinions outside of not only your peers, but people that are outside of the industry as a whole. And they'll actually pinpoint things within your portfolio that they really like, and they'll pinpoint the things that are the worst things in your portfolio. Once you get enough of those, you'll start seeing this through line of what's actually good and what's actually bad in your portfolio. And those are the things that you should probably keep and toss from your portfolio in order to make your portfolio the best. You're putting your best foot forward. and no from a company doesn't always mean no. Um, one of the greatest things that I have always told people is just because you apply someplace now and you don't hear back from them doesn't mean you shouldn't apply from there, in 8 months from now. They could just not have a job right now for you, but they could like your work. They just have put you in the filing cabinet. The thing that I would say is regardless of whether you're applying or reapplying at a company, every time you reapply, I would definitely say you probably should have some more new work on your portfolio, and you probably should have taken some of the worst work out of your portfolio, because 90% of the time, I look through a lot of portfolios. I do a lot of hiring. All I'm looking at is the portfolio first. Like, I could give a crap what your name is. Like, reading your name takes time, and I don't have that much time.
Mine's pretty simple. It's one syllable, just Ace. So
oh, I know. But what I'm saying is, when you're going through 50 to 100 portfolios, the only thing that you should be looking at is the portfolio itself. And if you sent in your portfolio, let's say 6 months ago, and I didn't like what I saw, I was like, whatever. But you send it in, now, and you've changed up like 3 or 4 pieces of your work, and I look through that and I like it, I more than likely will not have remembered anything that you did 6 months ago, because I've gone through so many portfolios that it doesn't even matter to me. What matters is what I'm seeing now. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely, because actually, side question. So, on that note, what would be the time frame you would say for a person who's got that portfolio? How often should they be switching or keep something up on the portfolio?
Oh, I say as quickly as possible. I mean, let's say you're a student right now, right? Let's say you're graduating tomorrow.
Time has moved fast.
Yeah. Your work that you just produced within the last 4 months, you're better than that now. So the work that you're going to produce in the next 4 months is going to trump and be so much better than the work that you produced at the last 4 months of your schooling career, that you better be working on your portfolio to be changing all that stuff, because you're better than that, and that's what you want to show when you go to apply for a job. You're constantly, if you're doing it right, you're constantly going to be getting better, and you're constantly going to be changing up your portfolio, because that's what really, really matters. It's your continual growth and your ability to make better work through that growth. So as fast as you can get rid of it, that's the better.
Just don't throw it away, but just kick it to the curb.
Yeah, I mean,
let the next one come on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have a way of not posting things and posting. Let's say you have an art station, you could take things down and put things up, at will. You just have like a little browser in there that you click on a few tabs and your stuff is up, or you take it down. So,
take it down.
Yeah. I mean, think of where you were 6 months ago and think of your skill now. Would you want to show work from 6 months ago, or would you want to create a new piece now and show that one?
Absolutely, the skill now. That's what I would definitely want to show.
Yeah, totally. So that's gonna be your entire career, and if you don't think about it that way, then you're failing.
Oh boy. So the key to be the best animator is completely do everything opposite you do in a relationship. Just be the worst guy. Kick it to the. Don't even call it back later. Just continue on, press on.
No. Actually, you're actually just you're nourishing your ability, and you're always putting your best foot forward. How's that?
And see, now you have the generic explanation for it. The wasn't me, it was you. I was moving forward, you back.
Oh Lord. That was great. Yeah, all 3D is an abusive relationship. Oh, I kid.
It was just a fair point for you guys to remember. So if you ever just wanted the image in your head how it should be, That's how it should be like. Do that.
always put your best foot forward. That's all you gotta do.
Best foot forward. Do prenups, everything.
Oh my god. Jeez Louise.
Just be the worst. Just be the absolute worst to be the absolute best.
Oh my gosh.
But this has been great. So, any latest projects you've personally been working on?
The latest things that I've been working on. I've been working on. The last thing that I worked on that shipped was Half-Life Alyx, which was a VR title set in the Half-Life universe, shipped from Valve. If you haven't had a chance to play it, I'd recommend playing it. It's,
sorry, you said Half-Life, like not Half-Life, Half-Life.
No, Half-Life.
Oh, Half-Life.
Yeah, Half-Life Alyx. It's probably one of the better long-form VR titles that have been released. There hasn't been many long-form VR titles, but this one's definitely really polished, and it's very enjoyable. And it's not just because I worked on it. I mean, I worked on very small bits of it in comparison to how big that game is, but it's phenomenal if you have a chance to play through it. And recently I've been working on Counter-Strike Go, which is still doing really well. We're still updating the game as even 12 years after we shipped it. So actually, no, wait, it's been 9 years after we shipped it. Sorry, 9 years since we shipped it, but it's still going strong. It was released in 2012.
Well, that's incredible to be in. That's a long time, actually. Yeah,
It really is.
It hit me. I was just like that's almost a decade. 1 year was being a decade ago.
Well, think of it like this: like Steam is one of the biggest sellers of PC games online, and Counter-Strike has one of the top 3 spots at any given point of the players playing games online, and that's almost a 10-year-old game. So that's saying something about a 10-year-old game.
10 is a magic. 10 is obviously the magic number.
Yeah.
For the game of the year.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I still don't know what voodoo it has that makes people go back to it and play it. I play it because it's fun, but yeah, it's really hard to understand what keeps people coming back to a game for 9 years already or 10 years, and they're still loving it.
I mean, you see Call of Duty and Fortnite. I think people just love these type of things.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I played the heck out of Fortnite when it came out. I had to stop though, and I still play the Call of Duties when they come out too, because those games are gorgeous.
Absolutely.
They do such a phenomenal job on those games. They're right on that cusp of like you're basically playing a cinematic.
I think I've tried my best to play those type of games, and I do, but playing them puts you in a different mindset where you're no longer you. You're Jimmy in the basement whose mom's yelling at him to get off the game. He's breaking the TV because Arnold shot him with an RK4, and she's wondering why he didn't see it with the scope.
Oh my god.
I'm not speaking from personal experience. This is obviously just generics, of course.
Yeah.
Because I would never do that today